There's a mistake. Moonlight, you guys won Best Picture.
You like me. Right now. You like me.
Ever since I was a little kid, I wanted this.
Mom, I just want an Oscar.
I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of the Ultimate Oscar Showdown. And this week we are once again going to be tier ranking winners, Oscar winners from a certain decade, from a certain category. This week being the supporting actress category for the 2000s and the winners there. But if you're new to the series, what I do every single week is talk about a different Oscar category from certain decades. We'll usually start from the 2010s, then go all the way to the 70s, and then start a new category. We've already tier ranked the winners of the Best Picture category, Best Lead Actor, Best Lead Actress, Best Supporting Actor, and now we're going to finish off the season with looking at the Best Supporting Actress category before we jump into this channel's flagship series, Season 8 of the Olds Oscar Countdown, a series where I predict the Oscars. So if you're new and have been joining us just for this, stay tuned for that, and we can, talk about the Oscars even more and what's new for it then. But if you're a fan of the series and just want to, get some Oscar content during the summer, I love that as well, because you guys have been showing a lot of support on this channel and for these videos. It's one of my more successful summer series, which I really do appreciate. In particular, you leaving the comments down below. I love reading your comments. I love hearting them and replying and giving some of your thoughts and understanding, what do people think and what are their own personal rankings. And you guys have been great with that, still continuing to comment down below. So I still appreciate that. And if you are new to the channel, please do comment below and let me know your thoughts. It really is greatly appreciated. But without further ado, let's jump into things. Starting off with the year 2000, the winner being Marcia Gay Harden for Pollock, which was a huge surprise at the time. Not only was she not nominated for a SAG or BAFTA or Golden Globe, therefore she didn't win any of them. But what was even more sort of interesting was, of those major three, the Golden Globe, the SAG, and the BAFTA, they were split between Julie Walters, Judi Dench, and Cate Hudson. So there wasn't a clear understanding of who was going to win. People thought it would be one of those three actresses because they had won the precursors. But then Marcia Gay Harden, because she wasn't even nominated for them, this was the only opportunity for people to show their support, and then she won here. So I think for a lot of people, their understanding of the film and the performance in particular is of the surprise, the Oscar surprise. But that's just because I think not a lot of people have seen the film. It was released sort of later in the season, that Oscar season, and it is somewhat hard to find at times in terms of availability. But I did manage to see the film, and I think she's terrific in that. And I think if more people had seen the film, they'd appreciate that actually this was a pretty well-deserved win. Now, it may not have been my personal win. I'm personally a big fan of Cate Hudson, Almost Famous. I think she's really terrific in that role. That being said, I don't begrudge Marcia Gay for winning here, because she does an interesting thing, which is take a supporting wife role-playing role and elevates it. I mean, we see the sort of supporting wife persona, stereotype performance in many films, and oftentimes they're sort of pushed to the side and they're sort of uninteresting. Even in modern day movies, and modern day great movies, like something like Oppenheimer, which released relatively recently, there's some struggling sort of supporting wife type roles that don't have a lot to work with. But what I really like about Marcia Gay Harden's character and performance here in Pollock is that she's allowed to do more, but she uses every single opportunity that she has to accentuate and elevate the supporting wife role from just a real sort of in the background person that's just there to show off the main character's home life, but rather as a sort of co-partner in the art. In this case, the movie's called Pollock. It's about his life, but the movie is really about the relationship between the two, between Pollock and his wife, Marcia Gay Harden, Lee Krasner. And the way she's able to elevate this character is by nailing the reaction shots. We'll see just in these small moments where we'll cut to her and we'll get a facial expression, the support that she has from it. It really is a great supporting role, great supporting wife performance in that way, where she'll see him working on his art and she'll sort of think about maybe interrupting him, but then decide not to and then leave something and then go away. Or when he's struggling with alcoholism and decides to pick up the bottle, we see the cut to her, and it's just a 2-second reaction shot, but we see the disapproval. We see the, oh no, don't go down this route, this is not good for you. So we understand that there's a genuine love and support and partnership between the two, so that when things go by and the relationship sort of comes to difficulties near the end of the film, we understand that heartbreak even more because we do understand the love. We don't think this is just a nagging kind of a wife rule, that there's a true support and a true love and a true wanting to do better and to work in the best way possible and to live the best life possible. So it's really terrific performance, and Pollock is able to execute and elevate that supporting wife role by really relying and utilizing many great reaction shots and utilizing those moments to help us understand the emotions of the characters and why these two ultimately stayed together for so long. So a really terrific performance, an underseen performance, I think, but a good one that will go into the A tier. Then the 2001 winner, Jennifer Connelly, for A Beautiful Mind. I've talked about this film already when I tier ranked the 2000s Best Picture winners video, so we won't go too into depth into the movie, but in that video I wasn't super impressed with the film. But that being said, Jennifer Connelly is not the problem. More so the problem, I think, is her character, because unlike Marcia Gay Harden in Pollock, she is, in this film, Jennifer Connelly, the supporting wife role. She doesn't get a lot to do. She's given some reaction shots, but the only reaction shots she really utilizes is to be sort of curious or homely, and she does get a little bit of interesting scenes, sort of like the meet cute that they have at the beginning, but particularly in the second half of the film there are some scenes where it's very much typical housewife kind of worry and concern, and Connelly's just ultimately not necessarily all her fault, but isn't allowed to showcase as much of her acting talent as I want. There's a really terrific scene at the end when she sort of puts together the pieces that this is how her husband is going to be for the rest of his life, and the sort of heartbreak of that, and she really nails that scene. I think maybe that's her big Oscar moment. But overall, as a performance, it's just oftentimes, I think, pushed to the edge, pushed to the side, and doesn't give her a lot of opportunities to showcase her great acting talent that we've seen her in so many other terrific films. So for me, it just doesn't make a huge impact on the film. So I think it's going to go into the C tier. Then the 2002 winner, Catherine Zeta-Jones for Chicago. And this was peak Catherine Zeta-Jones, and I really love this period of her, of The Mask of Zorro into Entrapment, into Chicago, into Intolerable Cruelty a year later. This sort of period of Catherine Zeta-Jones establishing her movie star persona is a persona I really love. And this performance is not a transformative performance. It's not a performance that you're going to go, oh man, I didn't even realize it was her. It's more of a performance like Octavia Spencer in The Help, which we talked about last week, or Julia Roberts and Erin Brockovich, where it's a classic sort of movie star performance, doing what they do best and honing that in and just enjoying it, because it's got a lot of, their performance has got a lot of charm, a lot of charisma. There's a sort of sense of seduction and sort of coy playfulness that she's able to do. She, as an actress, looks like she's having fun all the time, and there's sort of a light playfulness in sort of the witty banter that she has. And really, this Chicago performance, I think, is one of her best, and a really great supporting performance, because it's one of those performances where you always want more from her. She always brings a great sense of energy to the film, whether it be in her dance moves. She has this very sort of angular style of dancing, which makes her feel in control and in command. And then when we see her on screen, there's a sense of presence because of her sort of dance moves, which I think emphasize the confidence of her character and the confidence of her performing style, like I said, through those angular movements. Then also, when we're talking about the dialogue, she can be very witty. She has great comedic timing. Also, there's like that sort of sense of confidence, which I alluded to, is there because of just how theatrical and dramatic she is. Of course, based on a musical, so it has that ability too. So in terms of just a great movie star part, this is exactly there. She brings that sense of energy, that charm, that sort of coy, seductive elements of her persona used really well here. But then also, in terms of, which is a great acting talent, being to match the tone of the film. She understands that this is a little bit larger than life, a little bit more theatrical, a little bit more dramatic. This is not Traffic. This is not super serious melodrama. This is something a little bit more playful, a little bit more fun. And she understands that and matches the tone of the film. So she's got strong confidence, strong energy within this film, does that through her acting in terms of the dancing and the performance that she has with that all that jazz number, but then also with a lot of these sort of back and forth with her, Renee Zellweger's character, very fun, very witty, and very charming. So For me, it's, like I said, one of those performances, and that's a great supporting performance because you always want more of her, and you never get too much, and that's sort of a terrific balance that she brings. So for me, I love the performance, so I'm going to put it in the S tier. Then the 2003 winner is Renee Zellweger for Cold Mountain, and this is the Oscar that was given to her because they didn't give it to her for Chicago the year prior. And there's good elements of this film, particularly the Renee Zellweger sort of persona. In the same way we talked about Catherine Zeta-Jones has that sort of persona. I think Renee Zellweger being sort of the lovable but sort of feisty and independent and more modern persona, it's in full display here. So I understand why the Oscars ultimately decided to reward her for this movie. But unfortunately, there's sort of a clash where I think Renee's modern day kind of persona that we see in Jerry Maguire and Bridget Jones' Diary, that sort of relatable but sort of independent and kind of feisty energy that she has, is such a modern persona that it doesn't really work in this period piece film. It doesn't feel like this would be a real life person that existed during this time. It feels almost too modern. And there's something modern about it, like when you see the Starbucks cup in that episode of Game of Thrones. There's something just weird about it. It takes you out of it. It's like, that's not supposed to be there. And for that reason, that sort of, the performance ultimately struggles for me because I am taken out of the movie with that performance. She just feels like somewhat out of time. That's not to say she's necessarily bad. She's good at showcasing that persona, but I did wish there was a little bit more of a transformation to adapt to this character rather than just bringing her movie star persona. I think it was a bit of a miscalculation there. So for me, it's just a little bit of a forgettable performance that takes me out of the film. So unfortunately, it will end up in the C tier. Then the 2004 winner, Cate Blanchett for The Aviator. And I've talked about her before. I think Cate Blanchett is one of our great living actors. And yet, I think for a lot of people, they wouldn't necessarily identify this performance as a top 5 Cate Blanchett performance. That's not to say she's bad in it. It's just to say that the movie moves at such a breakneck pace. There's so much to cover in this film that she doesn't really get a lot to do as a character, despite being a main sort of relationship of Howard Hughes and his life. And for the most part, what she's being asked to do is to do a Katharine Hepburn impression. And she's very good at that, and she does it. And that's probably the reason why she won an Oscar. I mean, Katharine Hepburn is one for herself. She's very well appreciated within the Academy. So Cate Blanchett doing a Katharine Hepburn impression, I'm sure, appealed to the Academy in that sense there. And she's very good at having that staccato way of speaking and that very quick way of speaking, but sort of almost lower octave and register of a voice and that iconic accent and way of just being. She absolutely nails. I actually think Blanchett is able to showcase more of her acting talent, which we know is there, but in the film and in the later scenes, when we get her talking to Howard behind the door, when he's sort of locked up, and we understand the heartbreak of that situation because we know that, and she knows that someone needed to be there for him, and it didn't end up being her, and she kind of regrets that it wasn't her, but she more so was heartbroken the fact that there really was no one else aside from her so to be there and keep him afloat, and as he sort of spirals out of control. And just that sense of desperation and the heartache and the wistfulness almost in the sighs that she does with her breath and the voice control that she does within that scene. Really standout one there that showcases more than just the Katharine Hepburn impression. But unfortunately, we just don't get a lot of that. So listen, she's being asked to do a Katharine Hepburn impression. She does an excellent Katharine Hepburn impression and does get some of those scenes where she bats above her character and showcases some real depth and emotion. So it's a solid performance. But still, you almost want more because she's such a great actress, but still very solid performance, very good in the film, so it will go in the B tier. Then the 2005 winner, Rachel Weisz for The Constant Gardener. And I think this is a perfect supporting performance. You know, we've talked about this on the show. Sometimes people win Oscars because their character is very well written, and how their character eventually ends up, most of the time, dying is, you know, so interesting and so emotionally involving that, you know what, it ends up being an interesting character, and then that performer ultimately ends up winning an Oscar. But this is an example of a great character that only is able to be a great character if there's a great performance into it. It's like a Mahershala Ali in Moonlight or some of these other roles where they're very important, Rachel Weisz character in this movie, in the first half of the movie, the first third of the movie really, and then they have to be such an impactful moment of the film that their character has to linger throughout the rest of the film. And I think Rachel Weisz is terrific at doing that. And she's the one that makes that a reality. She's very bright in her scenes. We understand that this is a person with great ambitions and has, these sort of activist leanings and wants great things for the world and I guess for her career, but ultimately I think for others. And what Weisz does very well at conveying that sense of ambition, at that sense of urgency, it's just by moving very fast. It may not be something that is typically understandable within acting in terms of what's standard, but the physicality and the movements, the way she delivers her dialogue, always seemingly in a rush, the way she's moving around, what that does is create the sense of, oh, we got to keep up. This is a woman who's on her own path, who's doing her own thing, and if we, as an audience, wants to keep up with her, we have to sort of follow along. And that sort of infectious sense of energy and brightness that she brings, that Ralph Fiennes' character, I think, is attracted to, she does with the quick movements of her character, and that sort of that sense of urgency that she brings. So much so that when she doesn't have that urgency and decides to sort of slow down her pace and space out some of the words, it just brings an incredible sense of importance, because this is important. I'm telling you this directly because I'm being slow, because I'm being deliberate. I'm not being as fast as I was. So she totally understands the movement of her character and how she can contrast that urgency to slowness to add a greater effect and a greater sense of importance. So really a terrific performance that when you think about the movie, you think about her, despite her being not too much in the film. So a somewhat underseen movie, but a pretty good movie, and the best parts of the movie are with her. So that's got to give her a lot of credit. So Weisz nails the movie and her performance, so it will go into the A tier. Then the 2006 winner is Jennifer Hudson for Dreamgirls, and a Oscar win I think was propelled by her real life story, being on American Idol and people really falling in love with her, and then get to be in this movie and then being wowed by her and being a sort of ingenue for her time. I think in many ways correlated with the Dreamgirls storyline of being nobodies to being somebody, and then eventually the tragedy of that situation. And when you watch the film, you totally understand why America was in love with Jennifer Hudson during this time, because no real actor or performer, I think, has been able to capture the emotion and the intensity that she brings to her singing scenes. Most of the times when you think of musicals, the best musicals are able to have great dialogue scenes, but then also great dance and musical number scenes that also advance the plot. But also, in a lot of musicals, the musical numbers are sort of stopgaps that are great to show off some, big number and dancing and joyousness, but they actually kind of slow the story and they get in the way of the story. What was fascinating about Hudson's performance here is not only is she an incredible singer that gives you, chills when you hear her sing, she's very emotional. She communicates that emotion of her character through those scenes. We understand more about how her character is feeling in the singing scenes than we do in the acting scenes, which actually have her dialogue and interact with people. She's so great at doing those singing scenes and those performance scenes, and it really blows you away that those are the standout of the movie. And she's almost so good at those singing scenes that her acting, as a result, seems a little bit sort of straightforward. And I don't love the way her character is positioned, because we like her a lot, but then she's also positioned to be the antagonist of the film, which never felt always totally believable for you. But she does have sort of her redemption at the end, which is nice to see. But let's not kid ourselves. She won because she's a great performer, because she brings great emotion to those singing scenes, and that's what blew people away of the film. But out of a musical like Dreamgirls, that's what you want. And so for me, I think it's a definitely super solid performance that will go into the B tier. Then the 2007 winner, Tilda Swinton for Michael Clayton, which is a movie I talked about on this channel before, and a movie that I like quite a bit. And at the time, this was a bit of a surprise win. Tilda only had one winning the BAFTA, didn't win the SAG, didn't win the Globe, so it was a little bit unsure of who was going to end up winning. But I think the Oscars made the right choice at the end of the day, particularly because not only is the film terrific, but I think Tilda Swinton brings a unique energy and character to life. Not only is this a really unique, interesting character, but I think Swinton brings a unique energy to this. And for me, I always love something unique, something different, something iconic within this channel. I think Swinton brings that, and it's still an underrated performance, because Swinton's known mostly for sort of having a weird or strange energy. She'd done stuff before this, Orlando and supporting roles in Adaptation and The Beach. But I think she's very well known now, but this was a real key role for her in terms of showcasing just how sort of odd that energy is, because the character is not a traditional corporate villain overlord. It's a villain antagonist within the movie, but it's somebody who's spiraling out of control and can't sort of contain that. And it's almost like an actor who tries to cry, but tries to stop themselves from crying, but then ends up crying anyways. There's something really powerful of that versus just flat out crying. In the same way here, there's a sense of nervous energy, things of spiraling out of control, of one bad decision leading to another, selfishly trying to do something for your own good and then failing along the way. There's a real anxiety and nervousness to her performance. But she's not doing it by shaking her hands or shaking her legs all the time and jittering all the time. It's just by doing these more subtle things. She'll have her mouth agape in a lot of moments. She'll stutter her words. She'll dart her head around just ever so slightly. Her eyes are always moving. And it's a sense of, like I said with the crying thing, she's clearly spiraling out of control. She's clearly, someone who's obsessed with control that doesn't have it. But Swinton's character is trying to not show that case to the world. She's trying to be the sort of standard corporate, everything in control person, despite everything spiraling out of control. So Swinton's great at telling us and communicating to the audience that things are not going well, but also communicating to us that her character is trying to keep this stone face, trying to keep this sort of everything in control, normal matter, despite it sort of unraveling behind the scenes. So her ability to communicate both, to communicate that things are spiraling out of control, but then also to communicate that her character is trying to make it seem like things aren't spiraling out of control. A really unique character and a unique energy to this performance we don't see too often. And I think even though it was a strange one at the time, the Oscars ultimately made the right call. A fascinating performance from Tilda Swinton that you can't keep your eyes off of her. Really, really interesting performance. So for me, I love the movie, I love the performance. It will go into the S tier. Then the 2008 winner, Penelope Cruz for Vicky Cristina Barcelona. And we don't really think about this win as a comeback win, but it kind of is for Penelope Cruz. We have her early movies, the sort of breakout movies with Open Your Eyes and All About My Mother. And then she really becomes sort of the next ingenue. Billy Bob Thornton, post Sling Blade, cast her in All the Pretty Horses. Cameron Crowe, post Almost Famous, cast her in Vanilla Sky. John Madden, who directed Shakespeare in Love and won Best Picture, cast her in Captain Corley's Mandolin in his next film. But unfortunately, all those movies don't really work and are sort of disappointments to the director's past films. And then she's sort of in the middle in those early 2000s, goes back to Almodovar with Volver, and then gets this great opportunity with Woody Allen. And she's being asked to be sort of the stereotypical, loud, brash, fiery Spanish woman, and she does that very well. Unfortunately, because it's a supporting performance, she doesn't get a lot of opportunities to not be that. That being said, that role that she's being asked to do, I think, is very well done by her. She, I think, understands the sort of artistic, chaotic, all over the place energy of this person, and sort of nightmare of a person, and just how crazy kind of she is, and brash and very emotional. I think she taps into the sort of uneasy, unnerving energy that really, I think, brings an excitement to the film. There's a little bit of a one-note element to it, but I think ultimately Cruz is being asked to do that, and is excellent at embodying that energy, which is still a difficult task to pull off. So she's really the dynamite of the movie and executes that very well. So a very solid performance that will go into the B tier. And then the 2009 winner, Monique for Precious, in what was one of the most interesting Oscar campaigns of all time, in that she didn't really have one. She didn't really care about the Oscars. And of course, what did that mean? The Oscars loved her even more and wanted to reward her because she didn't really care too much and didn't care about whether or not she won. And that just made her, even more lovable in that way. And it's somewhat disappointing what happened to her career post the Oscar win. You wish she was in more stuff, because you see her in this film and she is so dominant within the film. She's so memorable when you think about the movie. Now, it's a hard movie to watch. It's not necessarily a movie that you rewatch all the time and rewatch scenes on YouTube. And yet Monique is very great in the film for what she's being asked to do. I think she's able to understand the sort of tense psychological trauma and bullying that she executes towards Precious. So ultimately we have to understand Precious and her trauma and why she doesn't want to go home or interact with this woman. And I think Monique is able to bring out that sort of small, subtle bullying, whether it be not always being crazy and over the top, but sometimes having these sort of subtle, under her breath, demeaning comments that just sort of build up over time, or certain looks of disgust that she'll have towards Precious's character. It feels very authentic, it feels very real, so that when you're watching the movie, you feel like Precious's character, and you don't want to be around this person, interact with this person, just this intense amount of hate and negativity, but not just complete villainous. There's a sense of tragedy of a person whose life didn't go the way she wanted to, and is now putting that out on others and really bullying them. And the sort of small, subtle things, like I said, the looks of disgust, the sort of cutting lines said underneath her breath, as well as being, of course, over the top and in her face as well. That kind of ability to modulate, because if you know someone that's, you know, intense and incredibly mean like this, it's not always 100% all the time. Sometimes you don't know how to judge their mood. You don't know if they're happy or sad. It's kind of hard to read them. And I think that sort of almost bipolarness Monique is able to really capture in the sort of uneasiness of this character. So for me, it's a really great performance that will go into the A tier. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know your personal tier ranking for this video. Like the 2010s last week, I'm sure you've probably seen a lot of these performances as well. So I'd love to hear your comments, and at least for the movies that you have seen, the performances that you have seen, how would you rank them? I'd love to hear that. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, stay tuned.